Fox 10 News investigative reporter Kati Weis has been following this story for the past year, and she's live at Government Plaza.
I'm still reading over all of the details of this new policy. Councilwoman Bess Rich actually just gave me a copy of it not long ago. But right now, at first glance, it appears that it does clear up some issues about how police officers use these body cameras, including storage and their discretion of turning those body cameras on. On the phone with me, he shied away from making those biblical references that you just mentioned, but instead he gave me a more vague response. According to sheriff's officials, he did shoot her in the head once, then took a nap, woke up, punched her a few more times, and then fell back asleep.
So why not go to the media?
Well, it was discussed.
The Alabama On-Site Wastewater Board here in Montgomery has found the Bay Minette police chief guilty of illegally dumping sewage. We were the only cameras rolling when that decision was made. It's pretty heavy, so I'm getting a bit of a workout.
Katie, are police saying how long the body may have been in the water?
Well, at this time, they're not releasing that information, Bob, but I did speak with a local coroner about that issue, and he tells me once a body ends up in the water, it takes about 8 hours for them to decompose beyond recognition. And I'm told that if a body is in the water for an entire week, that it'll take a long time for officials to be able to identify who that person was. Now, remember, the Be on the Lookout for the Person of Interest in this case was canceled shortly after the body was found here in Eslava Creek. So that gives us an indication that perhaps the body was not here in the creek for very long. It's been more than a month since the massive chlorine leak, and you'll notice these pine trees here in McIntosh are green. But take a walk to the area where Olin told 911 the cloud of chlorine gas was headed, and you'll notice these pine trees are still brown. Here's our candidate here up on the stage. I'm going to go try to talk to him here for a second if I can squeeze in. Excuse me, if it's possible. Excuse me. Do you mind if I squeeze in for a moment? Thank you so much. Senator Jones! Senator Jones! Can you tell the folks of Mobile, Alabama why you're excited?
We'll help you all the questions tomorrow. This is exciting now.
All right, absolutely.
What are they saying about Moore saying he's not calling it quits?
Right, Bob Lenise, we're just starting to get these reports in. Charles Barkley has been walking around speaking with folks in the media. That's where I am now on the Media Risers. Let's listen in to what he has to say, and I'll ask him a couple of questions about his thoughts on Roy Moore not conceding the race yet.
This is so cool for Alabama.
As I mentioned, Mr. Barkley, it sounds like so far Roy Moore has decided not to concede the race just yet. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm not worried about that. We won. We're going to enjoy the night and celebrate.
As I asked you earlier, what do you think this election, this victory means to the state and to the rest of the country?
Well, number one, it don't make us look like idiots.
All right,
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barkley. I appreciate
Charles,
it. He wants me to call him Charles. But as you can see, he's got a lot of folks who want to ask him a lot of questions. But you can see, he says he's not worried about the fact that Roy Moore has decided not to concede this race. After we got a tip from a concerned resident about this street racing, we decided to scope it out for ourselves. On the 3 different weekends that I've been out here witnessing this activity while undercover, I've counted as many as 30 different sports cars and motorcycles gathered here, and then they take turns racing the strip just down the road. After seeing our videos, Mobile Police Chief Lawrence Batiste agreed to crack down on the racers. City documents show in the last 4 years, the city of Mobile has agreed to pay more than 27 million tax dollars in cash incentives for private corporations. And city taxpayers are also having to make up for more than $13 million in tax breaks given to several other companies. Now, these are all of the incentive contracts signed with corporations in Mobile in the last 4 years. It took 3 months for the city to finally give us all 20 of these contracts. But once I received them, I took a closer look at the fine print to see what you, the taxpayer, are paying for. There's been a lot of progress in the city of Mobile in recent years. Downtown development is on the rise. The aerospace industry is booming, the cruise ship is back, and shopping venues have gotten makeovers. But with that comes a cost, and it's not cheap.
Not only are several companies getting millions of dollars in tax breaks, several others are receiving straight-up cash. This is nothing new. It's a practice that has spanned multiple administrations.
I am eligible for the office of mayor.
Since Mayor Sandy Stimson took office in 2013, city incentive contracts show at least 10 different companies are receiving those cash incentives, totaling more than $27 million in city tax dollars and more than $36 million when you add in state and county contributions to those deals. The justification behind shelling out all that money to big corporations that already have huge net worths? They bring in jobs.
The problem is they hire them for a short period of time, a year, 2 years. They don't have any kind of benefits on the job, and they never get full-time salary, so that what happens is you are now creating a class of the working poor.
State Senator Linda Coleman Madison is an advocate for stricter regulations on cash incentive deals, so companies receiving tax dollars are forced to offer quality jobs.
We don't have the luxury to play Russian roulette with taxpayers' dollars.
The Fox 10 News investigative team contacted all 20 companies who have received incentives in Mobile in the last 4 years to ask them how many people they employ and what kind of jobs they've created. Only 6 companies responded with an answer.
Turns out one company that receives more than $7 million in tax breaks only employs 5 people. That's Bayer Crop Science here in the Theodore Industrial Park.
Troy Wayman at the Mobile Chamber of Commerce helped secure that deal. Is that really fair for this company to receive such a large abatement when they only employ 5 people?
Well, there were a lot of things to take into consideration on the Bayer Crop Sciences project. Number one, the location of Bayer Crop Sciences, they co-located on site with Evonik. That meant an expansion at Evonik as well. So raw material that Bayer Crop Sciences was using is provided by Evonik. Now, also in the chemical sector, you're dealing with a significant capital investment. They typically don't have as many jobs as other projects, but those jobs are much higher paying. And therefore provide better jobs for the people that are seeking jobs in the community.
Wayman says if it weren't for these incentive deals, Mobile would lose out in the long run.
We have to remain competitive. If we don't remain competitive, we start losing projects. If we lose projects, then suddenly our community is not growing.
But while many incentives are meant to bring new business in, the contracts show some of these cash incentives are going to companies that are already here, who have already created jobs. VT Mobile Aerospace got $1.7 million of your tax dollars to do roof repairs on a hangar. And Austell received a check for $2 million to cover some construction costs.
We want to keep those jobs here. We want to keep our companies growing here. And the more investment a company makes in your community, the less likely they are to go somewhere else.
I compared Mobile's incentive agreements with those of comparable cities. Our neighbor to the east, Pensacola, has only signed 4 incentive deals since 2014. And in Knoxville, which is about the same size as Mobile, the city does not give out any cold cash incentives to corporations, but instead focuses only on tax breaks. What's your response to critics who might say you're giving out too many public dollars?
Well, I think it's a sign that we're seeing a lot of business activity, and we continue to get calls every day from developers. We take them on a case-by-case basis. Every one of these deals begins with a cost-benefit analysis. We look at the investment that the company is going to make. We look at the number of jobs, and then we calculate the tax incentives and other benefits that we can bring to the table. And we always structure it in a way that we're certain is going to benefit the taxpayer in Mobile.
After multiple requests for an interview, Mayor Stimson was still unable to speak with us about these incentive deals he signed. His communications director, George Talbot, tells me the mayor's office is considering a shift away from writing checks with tax dollars to big corporations.
We need to rethink how we approach this incentives game. We can do better.
Now, Talbot says all of these contracts here have what's called a clawback clause, meaning if the companies don't live up to their expectations, the city has the right to get the money back. He says with these contracts signed in recent years, a clawback hasn't happened yet. However, Talbot tells me with Gander Mountain on Schillinger Road closing this year, the Westwood Plaza developer will have to find a replacement soon, or else he could face having to pay back hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash incentives that they've received so far from the city. To see a full breakdown of the cash incentives and tax breaks offered in the last 4 years, you can head to our website, fox10tv.com. This Thanksgiving, people all over the world have a lot to be thankful for, but one couple in the Fowl River community is really thankful for life this year. 1 year ago this month, my mother donated a kidney to my father. This is the story of how a perfect match saved a life. They say true love conquers all. But Bob and Dorothy Weis, my dad and mom, are living proof.
He's turned out to be the light of my life.
I never even imagined that marriage could be as nice as it is.
7 years ago, Bob developed a rare autoimmune kidney disease known as membranoproliferative glomerulonephritis, or MPGN. The disease worsened over the years, forcing Bob to retire from his position as chief of anesthesia at the USA Medical Center. But in January 2016, his life almost came to an end.
He was in kidney failure so long that he developed congestive heart failure, and the congestive heart failure landed him in the hospital on life support for a couple weeks. That was really hard. For a while there, we weren't sure if he was going to live or die.
Miraculously, my dad survived, but he was in dire need for a kidney transplant. He was too old to be put on a donor list, so someone needed to volunteer. So my mom went through weeks of testing, crossing her fingers she could be the one.
It was something I really wanted to do, and I had a peace about it. There was a lot of prayer that went into the whole decision.
As if by fate, the two were a perfect match.
And I was just pleased as anything. And she is not only a match, she is a good match. And that will probably give me 10 to 15 years of good life.
They went through with the surgery in November 2016 at UAB's Kidney Transplant Center. 1 year later, Bob is able to enjoy a Thanksgiving feast with his family again.
I enjoy the company around the dinner table. I also enjoy the food. And last year, I couldn't enjoy much. And this will be just a particularly thankful time.
It's the 1 year anniversary, and we've come so far, and life is so much nicer. And we are just so thankful for UAB and the doctors that took care of us.
Now, the two are a true testimony to the power of love.
She made me realize how precious life is and how good life with her is.
Years ago, I gave him my heart, and so I didn't think twice about giving him a kidney.
From my family to yours, happy Thanksgiving. Love you, Mom and Dad. Well, today, your tax dollars are still paying former Governor Bentley's lawyers, even after Bentley pleaded guilty to 2 criminal charges and resigned from office. It all stems from a civil suit filed against former Governor Robert Bentley last year. Alabama's former top cop, Spencer Collier, sued Bentley, claiming wrongful termination and defamation.
The suit against Bentley and others is not just a wrongful termination, but everything that the governor did to try to hurt Spencer.
Because that suit happened while Bentley was still in office, the taxpayers continue to foot the bill for his attorneys, even though he's been out of office since April, and despite the fact the suit is being brought against him as an individual. Governor Kay Ivey's office says Bentley's attorneys are being paid through the Alabama Liability Trust Fund, which is a bank of tax dollars set up to cover public officials' civil suit costs. Quote, that coverage continues even after the employee or official is separated from service as long as it relates to conduct that occurred during state service, Press Secretary Daniel Sparkman wrote in an email to Fox 10 News Investigates. From April to June, Sparkman says the trust fund has spent a little under $2,000 to represent Bentley. However, a legal contract submitted to the Alabama legislature for review last year shows the representation in total
total was capped off at $100,000, and that the attorneys representing Bentley would be paid $195 an hour. I'm told if the case goes to trial, that $100,000 cap could be removed. Collier's attorney tells me he anticipates the case could take several more months, if not another year, to be resolved. That means several more thousands of your tax dollars could go to represent the former governor.
This ain't like a simple little who ran the red light car wreck case, so they do take time.
Collier's attorney also says his client is paying out of pocket for his end of the suit. Now, I also reached out to Governor Bentley's attorney, but he declined to give an official comment. Reporting in the newsroom, I'm Kati Weis, Fox 10 News.